Hey guys, today we're going to teach you 12 essential business idioms. Let's get into it. Hello, my name's David Harling, and in this lesson we're going to teach you 12 of the most common business idioms. So let's get straight into it with our first idiom, which is across the board. Across the board. It means something that applies to everyone or everything. So some examples of how you might hear this idiom would be: the manager promised his staff that wages would increase across the board. So that means that everyone was going to get an increase in their wage. It happens across the board. Or you might hear a theatre company saying, due to the new advertising campaign, ticket sales are up across the board. It means that ticket sales have increased for all shows because of the new advertising campaign. So across the board means something that applies to everyone or everything. Now our second business idiom is also a very common one. It is to get a hold of someone. To get a hold of someone. So for example, you might call up a company and say, I'm just trying to get a hold of Mr. Smith. It means to communicate with someone, to contact someone. So I'm trying to get a hold of Mr. Smith means I'm trying to contact Mr. Smith. This is a very common expression, and it's one that is often used on the phone. Our third idiom also relates to phone calls, and it is to play phone tag. To play phone tag. It means that two people are trying to contact each other by phone, but each time they call, the other person is not available. So for example, if I called you on the phone and you are not at your desk, I might leave you a voicemail message asking you to return my call. Now when you hear your message, you return my call. But unfortunately, I am now not at my desk, so you leave me a phone message asking me to return your call. When I call you, you again are not there, so I leave you another message, and so it goes. When I finally get a hold of you, I might say, we've been playing a bit of phone tag today, haven't we? It's a funny way to say that we have not been able to contact each other. It's like you're tapping each other on the shoulder, but each time you turn around, the other person is not there. Our next idiom is back to square one. Back to square one. It means that you must go back to the very beginning and start something again. So imagine you were playing a board game like Snakes and Ladders, where if you make a wrong move, your piece may be sent all the way back to the starting square of the board. Now, an example of how we could use this idiom would be, I raked up all the leaves in the garden yesterday, and last night there was a big storm. Now I'm back to square one. It means you now have to rake up all of the leaves again. You need to start over. Our next idiom is to cut corners. To cut corners. It means to do something badly or cheaply instead of doing it the correct way. So this idiom comes from driving. If you're in a rush, instead of driving carefully around a corner, you might cut the corner by driving in a straight line across the corner. Yes, it is quicker, but it is also a dangerous thing to do. So this idiom, to cut corners, is often used when referring to safety measures. So for example, you might hear news reports saying that corners were cut when designing the building. It means they cut corners to save money. If you are running a project, you might say, I want to do everything correctly. I don't want to cut any corners. It means you want to do it properly. You want to do it the right way. Now, another idiom that you might hear in the workplace is to clamp down on something. To clamp down on something. A clamp is a device that presses two things tightly together. To clamp down on something means to stop something from happening. You are putting pressure on it. For example, managers may try to clamp down on the use of social media during work hours. Or you might hear a colleague saying that managers are clamping down on overtime. It means that the managers are trying to reduce the amount of overtime that occurs. They are clamping down on it. Now, when you are finishing a deal with someone, you may hear the idiom dotting the I's and crossing the T's. This idiom means to pay a lot of attention to small details to make sure that everything is done correctly. So, for example, you may hear someone say, "I'll have the paperwork sent to you by Friday. I'm just dotting the I's and crossing the T's." It means they are making sure all of the paperwork is correctly filled in. So, for example, to dot the I's means to put the dot on the I. To cross the T means to put the cross on the T. You are making sure all of those little details are correctly filled in. To dot the I's and cross the T's. So our next idiom is to have a gut feeling about something. To have a gut feeling. It means that you have an instinct. You might not be able to explain why you think something, but your instinct is telling you something. You have a gut feeling about it. For example, you might hear, "I had a gut feeling he was lying. I couldn't tell you why I thought it, I just knew." Or, "I had a gut feeling about that client. I knew there was something not quite right." A gut feeling is an instinct. Now, this next idiom is often heard at the start of a business meeting. It is to kick something off. To kick off means to start something. So, for example, at the start of the meeting, the chairman may say, "Let's kick off the meeting by going over the agenda." It means let's start the meeting by reviewing the agenda. So think of a football match. It starts with what they call the kick-off. It is the first kick of the ball. It is the kick-off, the start of the game. Now we'll consider another great idiom that's often used when you first start a job. It is learning the ropes. Learning the ropes. It means to learn the basics of something. So, for example, when you are first starting a job, perhaps it's your first week working for a company, and someone might ask you how things are going. You could respond by saying, "It's going well. I'm still learning the ropes, but I'm enjoying it so far." It means that you're still learning the basics. The origins of this idiom come from sailors learning how to sail. The first things they would have to learn would be learning what all of the ropes on the ship do and how to tie knots. So for those first few weeks, they were learning the ropes. They were learning the basics. Now, another common idiom is, "It's not rocket science." It's not rocket science. This means that a task is not complicated or difficult. Rocket science, the science behind launching rockets, is generally considered to be a complicated task. So by saying that a task is not rocket science, they are saying it doesn't take a genius, a clever person to do it. Some examples of how this might be used would be, "Just hurry up and get the job done. It's not rocket science." Or, "Why are you struggling to put together that IKEA furniture? It's not rocket science." And finally, we have an idiom that is one that I use a lot. It is, It doesn't have to be War and Peace. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. Now, War and Peace is a very long book by Russian author Tolstoy. Now, the book is fantastic, but it is long. I love reading, but after about 4 years of reading this book on and off, I gave up because it is just way too long. Anyway, this idiom comes from this book. I often tell people that are writing reports for me that the report just needs to be basic. I'll tell them, I don't need War and Peace. I just need a couple of pages saying what happened and how much money was spent on the project. I don't need War and Peace. It means I don't need a long report. So there you go, 12 very common business idioms. Now, I'd love to tell you that these are the only business idioms you'll ever need. But unfortunately, there are hundreds of idioms that we use in business. But hopefully these 12 should help to get you started. If you can think of some other business idioms, then let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. I'll see you in the next one.